seems legit.
Good morning, Legitimates. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am making a little lap quilt. It's just a quick little, I was winging it as I go, but I think it's come out quite cute and it is sewing themed. So let's get started. Alright, so this is what I have been giving. I've got some batting. We've got pink. We've got this fun like white cat with the sewing machines. This piece here is going to be the backing. It's a grey and that's the big piece. So that's what we're using for backing. And then this is the panel. So the aim of the game is something cute and quick and glorious. So when I open up this panel, I will need to iron it all. It's got the cats with the sewing machine, and then at the top and the bottom we've got this strip. So I've got two of those strips, which if I want to I can just attach straight onto, but I think we're not going to do that. So I didn't really have a plan when I took all this fabric home. We're going to kind of do it as we go. I think I'm going to cut it out along the white line, and then I'm going to cut 1.5 inch strips of the blue and frame the cats in the blue. Then I've got this. Now obviously it's not tall enough this way, and I just want to double check and see if the pattern is directional. So this one's that way, this one's upside down, so it's not really directional. So if I cut the strips this way to put down the sides, that will work out. Then I'm thinking, with this, I don't think we need all of those. I'm thinking maybe just 2 of them in the middle, and then put some, maybe this one, or I could put a strip and then have these. So this is what we've got to work with. So the first thing we need to do is iron everything. The ironing's all done, so now I need to cut up the main panel. So for this you want to use your rotary cutter and a ruler, and I'm just going to cut 1/4 inch from the main panel. So that's going to cut off some of this white. So I'm just going to start from here. I'm going to go across like that, because all quilting is pretty much 1/4 inch seam. So it's going to cut off a little. Oh good, this is blunt. That's not going to help my day at all. All right. So we're just going to cut 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to cut the 2 short ends off first, because they're the shortest and therefore the easiest. I'm also making sure, see how this panel doesn't look very straight? So I'm just making sure that it lines up along the 1/4 inch line there, like that. I'm going to push really hard and keep my hands really far away so I don't damage myself. And hopefully that has cut. Excellent. So you don't have to use those little pieces off the side. See, and then I'm going to cut this grey off. Now if you wanted to, you could also use this grey stripping, so that nothing's kind of left behind. I am a little bit winging this as I go. I don't make a lot of quilts, so we will see what I end up with. But I don't think I'm going to use that for anything. Pop it in my not using pile. And then we've just got the last side. So I also need to make the decision of which of the fabrics I want to use for the border. Do I want a maroon border or do I want a blue border? And then, so one will be used as the border around these things, and one will be used as binding. So I will have to make that decision pretty soon. But that now has a perfect 1/4 inch panel, like strip all around the edge. So when we stitch this, you won't see the white. I'm actually thinking I might put the maroon. Now this fabric is technically not the same as that. As you can see, it is slightly a different color. I don't think that's going to matter though. I think we're going to border it in maroon, and then we'll use the blue for the backing, for the binding. So that's ready. Set it aside. I now need to cut some pieces out of this. So I'm going to fold it in half to make it easier to cut, like so. And you can see it's not even, and that's all right too. We're going to come from this edge over here. So I'm going to do, I want a 1 inch border, so I'm going to do 1.5 inch cuts for the 1/4 inch seam on both sides. Which is there. And I will have to square up that other edge. I'll do that in a minute. So I'm going to cut another one at 1.5 inches. And another one. If I had more time, I could do this all quite crazily and do it in like strips and join them all together and make the most craziest binding ever. But I am not going to have time. This will be a 3-hour demo. So I have to be able to fit it into about half that time, because the rest of the time I stop and talk and explain what I'm doing. So this is kind of how I judge what to do on demos. So now we're just going to square up this. That's not sitting straight. So see that little extra bit? We're just going to trim that off because that will make everything crooked. We don't want that. So those 3 strips should be enough to go around that whole internal border. Then, let's see how big this is. Because what we could do is we could put 2 of these and then just have some color, or we could put these in the corner, which I did see in a video. So you have 2 of these, they're upside down, but you put 2 in the corner and then the rest of the strip could be a color. Or we could use the cat, the white cat. So, do I want 1 or 2? I think I want 2 cats. So I'm going to trim a 1/4 inch past the tip of the star here, which renders this one useless, but that's okay too. So I've gone tip to tip, and then I'm just gonna cut that off there. Now you could use this for something else. And then again, I'm going to have, actually, I might go tip to tip on this as well, so that we're just gonna have these ones like that. So we don't need this extra little bit of fabric. We want to just make it look like we made these, except we didn't. It's just a bit of a cheat. I do love pinwheels. These aren't quite pinwheels, but it's the same basic principle, just arranged differently. So there's one. So I'm going to put 1 in the bottom corner, and then I'll put 1 in the opposite top corner. Because, you know, symmetry. I like things symmetrical. Now, if these, let's just check and see if they're all the same cat. So they are. So I'm going to use these 2 for the other side, because I want them to be different. You could do them the same as well. You have that option. I'm just not going to. So this time I want these 2 cats. So again, at the 1/4 inch line there, we're going to trim it off. These would potentially make quite cute little wallets if you're into the quilted look, as leftovers. And then there, and then there, and then trim. Now again, I could have left a border, except I wouldn't have been able to leave a border on this side. So it's better to just not, for symmetry's sake. Okay, so there's those. And now we need to measure how big they actually are. So they are 5 inches. So that makes it nice and easy. So now I just need some 5-inch strips of this one, which I've got more of. So this is quite cute and it's non-directional. So I'm going to use this for all of them, really. I'm going to fold it in half. I don't know if you can't see me doing that, but I'm trying to fold it in half. And then fold it in half again so it's at a manageable size. And then I'm going to, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can square it up and then twist it, but that runs the risk of unsquaring it when you move it. So I'm going to use the board. I'm going to line it up along any of the lines here and then square up this edge here. I like to take, that might seem like a lot, but I like to make sure that it's going to get all of it, which we got pretty close to not getting. And then from here, I can just use the ruler and cut all of this into 5-inch strips. And apparently it's cutting quite well. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I've just got this little bit left over. Don't need that either. Okay, so I think now, except for the binding, but we'll come back to that when we do the backing anyway. I think that's now everything I need. One thing I am going to do to these though, I'm just going to chop off this edging because we won't be using it. And I don't want to have to get up and down if I can help it. I will obviously have to a little bit for the ironing and stuff, but for the video, I would much prefer to just stay seated. So I'm just going to go through all 4 of these. And chop off the edges on just one end, because we probably won't use the full length of everything. There we go. Okay, now we're ready to go to the sewing machine. Alright, so I've got my sewing machine. We are on my domestic today, just for something completely different. And I didn't cut off the seam allowance here, so that's okay. I will just do it later. So, line these up. Now, I have a 1/4 inch line on here. So long as my needle's in the right spot, I'm going to backstitch just to make sure. But basically what we're going to do is sew these together with the edges touching. Now, I can tell where to sew here. I've got this on top because we want to make sure we get all of that edge and I don't veer off at all. But you can also just run it along the 1/4 inch line that's here, and that would also work for you. You could also put in a 1/4 inch foot. I unfortunately don't know where mine are, but that would be super handy. If you have a 1/4 inch foot, use that. You really can't go wrong. I'm so not used to having such a small space. I'm pretty sure I have a table for this somewhere, which would be super ideal right about now. My table is a bit bouncy because, to be fair, I am on racking. I am going to backstitch just out of habit. You of course do not have to. But now I have got my edge around there. Now you got to remember that there'll be a little bit less because of the next bit. It'll be fine. So, flip this over, grab another piece. I'm going to trim it all down when I go to my chopping board so that I get everything square and I don't just wing it and chop and hack at it. That's not what I want to do. I'm also excluding this seam allowance because we don't want that either. Pop it under. Off we go. Line it up. Trim it down. Line it up. I really miss having a huge table to lean on. Yes, I could pin it, alright? I am aware of that. But where's the fun in that? I backstitch out of habit. You don't really need to backstitch for quilting, but bag making you definitely do. Now I'm going to go over and I'm going to put this up like this, iron this open like so, and then I'm going to use the rotary cutter to trim off the excess, but I'm going to iron it first. Alright, so as you can see here, we are all ironed nice and flat and chopped it off so it's in line. So now we are going to take the next pieces and join them on as well. So again, not using the end. I could have cut them off. You can definitely do that if you want to. I'm just going to line this up along the 1/4 inch line. I'm going to need to get some rubber matting for under this, I think. Because there is absolutely no way I'm spending my life sewing slowly. Line it up along the edge. Look at me concentrating to make sure it's even. I really wish I knew where my 1/4 inch foot was. I do have one somewhere. But you see now we're getting like a cute little border. Grab my last piece. Now if you wanted to, you could join those two pieces together. It just means you're going to have a seam, which is something I don't want. So that's why I'm not doing it. Right sides together again. Line up that edge. It's just a lot of straight lines, really. Quilting's a really good way to practice straight lines for bag making later. Not so good for curves, though. Line it up. If I had a longer table out the front, I could line up more at a time. This bouncing's going to get old. I have to basically push down on it to stop the bouncing, which it can do. And then we're going to go and cut the excess off this as well. Out of habit. I should really stop doing that. Alright, now before I get up and iron it, because I don't have to attach anything else to this, we can pop that aside and move on to our kitty cats. So you need to decide which one you want at the top and which one you want at the bottom. And so then one side we're going to, yeah, it really doesn't matter. So this one is going to be at the top. So we're going to line this up along here and just stitch it together. And then we'll do the opposite on the other one. Okay, and so then this next one needs to be on the opposite side. So we're going to stitch it to here. So we're going to grab a piece and stitch it to there. And I'm not even worried if it's upside down to the other piece because it's pretty non-directional. But depending on what fabric you're using, you should maybe think about that. Alright. So now we're going to iron that and this and the main part of the quilt and then get attaching. Alright, so everything's now ironed lovely and flat. I'm going to take one of the pieces that does not have the cats on it and we're going to do the long sides first. Much like we did for this piece so that the corners are going to kind of match. Again, you don't have to do it that way, but that's what I'm choosing. So I can now line these up because I've chopped off that excess. Line it up at the 1/4 inch mark and off we go. You want to try and put all of the weight onto your table. So sometimes that'll mean moving your machine forward a bit. And again, if you want to, you can pin this. I seem to have more success without pins. 1/4 inch foot would be ideal. If you plan on doing a lot of quilts, the 1/4 inch foot will be your best friend. Until you lose it, like I did. Or a foot that's got things marked on it. That's an option too. And then when we get to the end, again, you don't have to backstitch. And then we're going to do the other long side. So again, I could go and cut that off now, but I tend to not. So again, the end that I have cut off, we're going to line that up. And I'm building it this way also, so I don't have any join seams in my fabrics. There should be, the only join seams we're going to have on this is the binding, because binding doesn't come as long as you need it. And that's just inevitable. And you can use up the rest of these for something else. Quilters do tend to hoard their fabrics, even their like pieces like this. Also, if you're into like that hexagon stuff or pattern piecing, you could use these for that as well. It's not my thing, but it is a lot of people's thing. Line it up, stitch it down. This hand is just holding this in place so it doesn't vibrate around. Because it does tend to like doing that. Line up that corner. Done. So now you should have your two long sides. So it's starting to get quite pretty. I'm going to chop those off and then I'll stitch on the other ones on top and we're good to go. So I'm starting with the top right cats. So I'm going to do top right and bottom left. You could also do top left, bottom right. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to put these here. So this one, we're going to line these up. I always do a lot of sneezing when I make quilts. Must be all the dusting and cutting and stuff. So again, line up those corners. Under the machine we go. at the 1/4 inch line. I don't know why, I just like to backstitch. I know you don't need to. Still just makes me happy. So, off we go. Lining up. You also want to make sure that you're not pulling on it and stretching it out of shape. Do about that much at a time. Lining everything up. You don't want to pull on this. There is quite a lot of give in quilting cotton. And the last thing we need is a wonky quilt. Line it up. To the other side, we're going to do it the other way up to ensure that the cats are where we want them to be. This is going to be, it's going to be a rectangle, but it's going to be more squarey rectangle than traditional size rectangle. But to counteract that, what you could do is you could keep these pieces at 5 inches and you could make these side ones skinnier so that it will then get to be a longer quilt than it is wider. The proportions will change. So instead of doing 5 inches like I am, you could have done 4 inches down the side. See, now I've got kitty cats up in the top corner, which looks super cute, just FYI. And so, I'm going to cut again, I'll cut it off later. So this time, the cats go in the bottom corner. So let me just move my machine and show you. So the cats go this way and they're going to join down the bottom like this. So we're going to put this one on top and I'm going to stitch again from cat side first. That way I don't have to worry about lining anything up. This is a really lazy way to make a quilt, which I'm here for, just so you all are aware. I love a good lazy quilt. And then we might do one more border of maroon before we attach the binding, just to, you know, make it a bit bigger. Or you could just leave it as this. It depends on what size quilt you want. It really does. And how much time and effort you want to put into said quilt. I need to be able to make this fairly quickly for a demonstration. So I'm making one to show the finished result and then we're going to, I'll sew one on the day. So this is just basically to look at the finished product and how much fabric I used for it, etc, etc. But if I had more time, I would do more elaborate things. I would do a lot of pinwheels. Just because I love pinwheels, they're my favorite thing to do for quilting. Line up the edge. Then we're nearly finished. And the reason I haven't edited any of the sewing out is because I want you to see how long it actually takes to make one. So now down the bottom, we've got those. And then up in the opposite corner, we've got those. And I've made sure the cats are in fact not upside down. So that's another very important thing. So I just need to iron this off and then we might just leave it at that and put the binding on. Okay, so I'm just going to show you really quickly what I've done here. I have laid the backing down, right sides down, and then I've put the padding on top, and then I've decided to do it sideways. Now I'm just going to take some scissors and cut about here all the way along, and then I'm going to actually put some pins in it to hold it all in place. It's really hard for me to record this on my very tiny desk, which is why I'm just giving you an overview. So yeah, I'll cut it about there, so give a little bit of an overhang across there, pin with lots of pins, which I need to go and find, and then I'm going to have to do some light quilting. Alright, I found my walking foot. So even though I don't know where my 1/4 inch foot is, I do have a walking foot for domestic machines. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start probably, I've got lots of pins in this too, so 9 out of 10 times I stab myself with pins. I do know that some people do like to use, what are they called? Safety pins instead. I'm going to make my stitch length 3 3/4. And then I am going to stitch in the ditch. So this will take a really long time. So I have sped it up. I am stitching in the ditch along the longer edges and the outer part. And then I'm going to go around the cats. Now I don't do all of these on camera. I'm just showing you this one. It was a lot of fiddling, but worth it because it looks amazing. So now I'm going to stitch around the whole edge to hold all the layers together and pull out the pins as I go. This is to make it wickedly easy to put my binding on. Alright, I have switched my foot back to normal and I have cut 2-inch strips of the navy that I'm going to use for my binding. So the first one I'm going to lay across the machine like this, and then I'm going to grab the next one and put it right sides down to make like a cross. And the reason it's overlapping is because of the selvage edge, which we are not using. I also want to go back to a 2.5 stitch length, and we're going to stitch across there. I like to back stitch, you probably don't have to. And then I'm going to grab here and flip it over like that, so that the angle will always be the same. Took me a long time to work this out. And then we're going to sew the next one. And I'm just going to change sew all of these. At a right angle, back stitch. So again, I'm going to grab it and flip it over my hand like this. And grab the next one. Now I've just done 4 pieces because I believe that'll be enough. We're going to stitch, get on there, back stitch, diagonally down to the end and back stitch. And so then you're going to have what looks like this nightmare. So I'm going to cut that little jump stitch, and then we're going to cut up and leave about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then chop off that angle as well. So this is the shape that we're chopping off, and it gives us this. So when we open it, there are no taily bits sticking out. We're going to repeat that for the rest, and then I'm going to, you've got 2 options. You can iron it in half. You can either do more ironing or more sewing is how I look at it. So you can either just iron this in half like this, stitch it on, and then we're going to fold it around and stitch it on again. Or you can do what's called a double folded bias, where we iron it in half and then tuck both the raw edges in as well. And then you just slip it over the edge and do 1 lot of stitching. I think I'm going to pick that option just because it's less stitching, and so theoretically it's quicker. So I'm going to go iron this up and then I'll be right back. Alright, so all my binding has been folded in half to the center and then in half again. And so I'm just going to pick somewhere random. So I'm going to start right here. Doesn't matter where you start, really. I am going to use the other end though, because I did cut off the selvage edge of this end, and I'm going to leave about this much. So I'm just going to slot the edge of the quilt, and it just sits over like that. And I'm going to start about here. So we're going to stitch, back stitch. You want to get fairly close to the edge, like that. And I'm just going to slot the quilt inside the binding. And then that way it's also stitching the back. The neatest way to do binding is like by hand stitching it all. We're not doing that. I don't have the time. It does look really pretty though when the front looks like it's got no stitching at all. Alright, so then when we get to the corner, I'm going to pinch it at the end, and I'm going to open this up flat and then push it. So it's got this little, well, you can't really see. It's got this little right angle, and it's going to create an angled corner. If you do it right, which I just didn't. There we go. So then we're just going to stitch up to it And this is where you might want to clip. I'm going to needle down, and then we're going to continue down the next edge. Corners are always the trickiest part. Slot the quilt in. I'm using my fingers like pins to hold it in place, and I'm just going to do it little bits at a time. You could also, if you wanted to, pre-clip it or pin it in place. I personally don't really get the appeal. It takes a lot longer to do it that way. This looks like it's taking a long time, but really I'm just slotting in. I'm doing about 10 centimeters or 4 inches at a time. And it just slots in to the curve or the fold where we ironed it. Little bits at a time. And then when I get closer to the edge, I like to get to about, I don't know, about that far from the edge, and then I'm going to pinch it, fold it, and then hold it in place for the corner. And it's tricky, but it is doable. Needle down, pivot on a right angle, start the next side. So I'm going to arrange the whole quilt. Sometimes I have to go back and check I haven't missed anywhere. It has been known to happen. On the edge, and over we go. So unfortunately, we've just landed where it joins on the corner. It does make it extra thick for that, but it happens. That is the one perk to pre-pinning it, is you can work it out so that there's never a joint on a corner. But it is what it is. You just treat it as normal. It's just going to be a bit thicker. And so I just had to lift up the presser foot a little bit to get over the bump. Got these little tails. And then we're nearly to the end. Yay! just want to do this and this, and I'm going to take a little piece from the end here and open it out, because that's how much we need it to overlap. So we get to here, that's going to sit exactly there, and then that goes to there, so then we just need to do that much extra, which is to here. I'm gonna just backstitch. Take both of these like that, right angle, open them out. Now this always took me a while, right? And then when we stitch along there, it should just tuck into the end. So here, down to here, like that. And then we're going to just check it to make sure it fits. You shouldn't have any kind of lumpy bits except the lump that we haven't cut off. And then cut off that little excess bit there. Oh no, I put a twist in it. It's fine. We're just going to unpick it. It's not my day. Everything's going wrong this morning. Alright, so I'm just going to snip the stitches like so. Try that again. So, on the edge, that way. Hopefully that's the right way this time. There we go. I just had an extra twist in it that I didn't need. So now we're just going to come back up to where we were. And stitch. Tucking under all the raw edges. Like that. And then backstitch. And it's done. Trim off those start tails and the tails from the join. And voila! One lap quilt. Super, super cute. Binding. I've got quilting lines on the back. Good to go. It's not a big quilt. It is a perfect lap quilt. I don't make big quilts. You could also make this size for cots. Whatever you want, really. But thank you for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time.